What's up, everybody? Welcome to Sports Chaos with Dame. Today, we're going to be going through the Week 16 matchups in the NFL because we got some very big games, some very important games in the divisions, and most importantly, some big games for playoff seeding, playoff positioning, whatever you want to call it. So, we got a big game tonight starting off in Seattle. The Rams versus the Seahawks. Both teams 11-3. Seattle, of course, coming in at 5-2 at home, while the Rams match that record on the road, of course, at 5-2 as well. I think this will be a very interesting matchup. I know the first matchup they matched up in LA, and the Rams came in, of course, playing good ball, was favorites in that matchup and lost. So now they have to travel to Seattle in a tough matchup where it's winds of about 19 miles per hour. They're calling for light rain. Right now, I believe it's a light drizzle. So it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be some tough circumstances to play through. Devontae Adams is also out as well, which we know he's been super big in that offense this season. So it'll be interesting to see how this game goes. Whose running game will be more effective? I think that leans in favor of the Rams, of course. Just with Matthew Stafford playing at an MVP caliber level right now, maybe the front runner for MVP if it were to end today. And then, of course, Kyron Williams in the tandem with Blake Corum that's been coming on as of late. So I think that leans their way. I know Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker are the duo in the other backfield, but you would think it benefits them being a home game, but I would lean towards the Rams. However, this matchup in particular is completely interesting. At Stafford, I said earlier, MVP caliber season. Currently, as of week 15, has thrown for 3,722 yards, 37 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. Kyron Williams, as I was just talking about with the tandem of him and Blake Corum, 211 carries for 1,030 yards and 10 scores. And then, of course, on the other side, you have Jackson Smith and Jigba, which have been having a phenomenal season as well. But I can't just skip over Puka Nakua. Let me not do that because that would be wrong to skip over him to talk about the receiver on the other team. So, of course, Puka Nakua currently has 102 catches for 1,367 yards and 6 touchdowns. And that Rams defense that people were so unsure about, of course, we knew coming into this season the D-line would be very good. But you have guys on the back end like Emmanuel Forbes and Co. that we weren't too sure about, a lot of unknowns to the casuals, and so far so good. That defense is one of the top defenses in football this year, and they've been playing very good ball. Like I said, this game's going to be super interesting, but on the other side, like I said, in the home team in these crazy circumstances, you have Sam Darnold, which has had 263 completions for 3,400 yards, 3,433 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. We've seen him have some very bad games though, with no touchdowns, multiple interceptions. I'm talking 3 or better. So in these circumstances, it's going to be super interesting to see how he goes. And then, of course, as I mentioned with Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker, they're trying to find his identity. I don't know if it's because Kenneth Walker's on a contract year, and on top of that, he's coming off of a season-ended surgery last year, but the situation with him and Charbonnet has been real shaky lately. So you never know who's going to do what on a night-to-night basis, or I should say a game-to-game basis. But he is the leading carrier, but he only has 4 touchdowns on the season with less than 200 carries. So we'll see how that goes in that backfield tonight. But, of course, the guy on the outside, the man of the hour, JSN, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, 96 catches for 1,541 yards. I can't forget the 9 touchdowns, but 96 catches. So under 100 receptions, 1,541 yards with 3 games to go. It's crazy. But nonetheless, Mike McDaniel, of course, the head guy, be dialing up the defenses. We've seen that since he's came into the league with Baltimore and then transitioned over to Seattle to take over the head coaching role. So I think this will be a super good game. I think in this matchup, it's basically a pick 'em. I'm seeing actually right here. Seattle's 1.5-point favorites. The circumstances, I kind of got to lean in the direction of the Rams because I feel like the Rams dropped the ball earlier. So you expect Seattle to come home and take care of business because this could very well be for the division. Whoever wins this game could probably put themselves in position to take care of the division title this year and bring it home. So This is a very interesting matchup, super intriguing, 50-50 game. But for me, late in the season, as I mentioned earlier, I do trust the running back duo in LA right now more. And then, of course, Matthew Stafford is playing at an MVP level. So I, even with Devontae Adams out, I'm a lean, I think, with the Rams to get a win here. But as I said earlier, I would not be surprised at all by any means necessary if the Seattle Seahawks, of course, take care of business at home, considering they were able to get a win on the road against them earlier in the season. And then, of course, as I mentioned, in that NFC West, you currently have the Rams, which locked up playoff spot at 11-3, but right behind them is the Seattle Seahawks at 11-3, which if they were to win tonight, they would hold the head-to-head over them completely because that means they had the season sweep on them in their division matchups. But then right behind them, you had the San Francisco 49ers sitting at 10-4. And one of these teams have to lose tonight, at least you would think, unless we end in a dramatic draw. But you would think one of these teams have to lose. So if the Niners can win this week, they pull within a game and the same record as somebody, and they have the head-to-head over one of these teams currently as well, with I think a game or two to go against them. So it gets real interesting in the NFC West. Whoever wins this game puts themselves in the driver's seat to win a division, but it still isn't certain. So this is a super big game. I think it's very important actually for Seattle to win this game, considering they got the early win over the Rams. But like I said, I think the Rams win a tight game here, but I would not be surprised either way it goes. So drop a comment, let me know what y'all think of the outcome, who the key players are in this game for you, and most importantly, who you think's gonna win. Of course, now we're going to just transition right into the Bears Packers. I think this is a huge matchup as well. Of course, the biggest news for either team over the last week is Micah Parsons going down with this season ending injury. Super unfortunate. Went over there, had that team playing good on the defensive side when a lot of people thought that defense was going to, you know, continue to take steps back as they were getting older. But Micah came in, ignited the team even when he wasn't statistically making an impact. We know what his impact is every snap that is played on that defensive side of the ball with him out there. So that's definitely a big loss. And then Chicago, defense been stingy. Caleb Williams, even when he can't play great through the first 2 or 3 quarters, fourth quarter, game on the line, he has the ball. Guess what? He's getting that shit done. Caleb Williams been getting shit done in the fourth quarter. And as a lot of guys would say, if you can't do it through 1 through 3, if you can do it through in the fourth, that's all that really matters. If your team is there in position and you can be the guy to get it done in those moments, that's what it is. As well as he has his moments dissecting defenses as well. Of course, I still think he holds on to the ball a little bit too long, but he's also turning into one of the best escape artists in the NFL from the pocket. So you got to take the good with the bad. As a Ravens fan, I definitely understand. It is what it is. They're playing winning football. Ben Johnson is changing the culture. He's starting to make these guys believe. I think at the beginning of the season, they didn't really have that belief in reality. Last year was tough. Caleb Williams took a lot of hits. The outside guys weren't producing the way that they thought they should, but that comes with everything else that I mentioned previously. And then coming into this year, you bring in Ben Johnson that had an explosive offense in Detroit. Division opponent comes in, started off a little so-so, and now look at him. Currently sitting at 10-4, going against the 9-4 Packers in a big division matchup in Week 16. I don't know what to expect, man. This is like another 50-50 game to me. These guys been playing good ball. But the thing is every time, even though they're 9-4, every time I feel like I start to think the Packers are the real deal, they end up blowing it. I'm like, man, the Packers is like that. And they're like, man, then they lose this game that they shouldn't lose. But this is a big game. It's in the Windy City. I'm sure, matter of fact, we could talk about it right now. It'll be about 10 mile per hour winds and about 30 degrees. So not too bad, for December football in Chicago, but definitely still a cold night. And we're talking about the Green Bay Packers, which the Lambeau Field is iconic in itself, so it won't be too bad for them either. So this will just be a regular game. I do think with the loss of Micah Parsons, coming off having to go to a division rival that needs this win because of the last time y'all matched up, y'all were able to beat them. So now they have to protect home field and get a win here. And I think that it'll actually end up being a very good game. I think that there's a reason why in the first matchup they were about a 6.5 point favorite, and now in this matchup it's a 1.5 point game, even though Chicago's still an underdog at home. Like I said, I think with Micah Parsons coming off of this, or them coming off of this short turnaround with Micah Parsons being out, that takes a lot out of their defense. That helps the game planning for the Bears, and I just think they'll be able to make a couple more games because one thing we know, Josh Jacobs and that Bears backfield, because I can't even just say Swift has been the backup as well. They've both been having their moments, and that ground game has been damn good. So I think both teams will be able to effectively run the ball. It's going to come down to what quarterback will be able to make the plays when needed the most, and protect the football most importantly. And it's funny because I say that, and as I look right here, Jordan Love, 283 completions on the year for 3,304 yards. Caleb Williams, 266 completions for 3,150 yards. Jordan Love, 23 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Caleb Williams, 21 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. So they both have 6 turnovers, and almost identical in touchdowns, and about a game difference in yards. So both quarterbacks probably playing at about the same caliber. So it is what it is. And then you have, as I mentioned, the running backs, both of these guys playing good. Swift, 191 carries for 935 yards and 7 touchdowns. Jacobs, 218 carries, 890 yards, and 13 touchdowns. Of course, we know he's been banged up. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on that matchup, because you just never know what can happen in a physical game of football when a running back especially is banged up coming out there playing. But he looked good last week, so we'll see. And then with when you get to the receivers, that's where it gets interesting, because this is two good teams, but their leading receiver, Romeo Doubs, 578 yards on less than 50 catches. Odunze, 661 yards on less than 50 catches. And he's actually out this week, so that'll be a big hit. DeAndre Swift and of Josh Jacobs, of course, are questionable. So it's going to be super important to see what happens. But I lean Chicago right now. I think they'll go into their home stadium and protect this, because, like I said, they need this win. They lost a couple weeks ago to this team. You want to turn around and get even with them, right? And then let the last 2 weeks be what they are, because Green Bay also has that tie, which that tie, it can help or hurt you depending on which side of the fence it's on. So Chicago definitely wants to put a win in the win column in this one for sure. But we'll see how it plays out, because that division, that NFC North, of course, the Bears are still sitting there at the top at 10-4. Packers right behind them at 9-4, which if they win this game, they'll have the same record. They'll also have the tie, and they beat them both games head to head. So essentially it would be hard for Chicago to get over them. And then the Lions sitting there at 8-6, with 3 weeks left. I don't think that they can win the division. But they'll definitely be fighting for a wild card spot. So this game, huge game. Bears need it. Otherwise, the chances of winning the division is slim to none, and they'll be fighting for a wild card. But I'm actually going to edge the Bears in a close game here. And of course, another big matchup we have this week, the 7-7 Tampa Bay Buccaneers traveling to Carolina to play the 7-7 Carolina Panthers. What a crazy few weeks has been in this division, as you had the Tampa Bay Buccaneers lose a heartbreaker 2 weeks ago, and then you turn around last week with the Panthers with a chance to control their destiny if they could get back-to-back division wins. They traveled to New Orleans to lose to the Saints in heartbreaking fashion, and now all the marbles are on these two teams as they play twice in the last 3 weeks, and they have the same record right now. Whoo, I don't know what to make out of this, because of course, I want to lean Baker Mayfield to say, I got to trust Baker over Bryce in these situations. But at the same time, the Tampa Bay offense, although they've dealt with some injuries, they took a step back in the back half of the season. They started off playing elite level football. I know Mike Evans went down, but even when he went down, they were still playing pretty good. And then they just hit like a rough spot, and it's been tough moving forward. And here they are sitting at 500 late in the year. Meanwhile, the Carolina Panthers, this is a successful season for them. To the football world, this is a successful season for them. Maybe not in that locker room personally, but to the football world, I mean, for them to be in contention for the division, whether it's at 500 or not, based on who they've been in the last few years, you got to commend this team. And they're young. They have a lot of young talent on both sides of the ball. The guys on defense playing lights out. The whole offense is young. It's something. It's something. It's something fun to watch. I mean, I remember watching that game a couple weeks ago against the Rams. They going for it on fourth down. Every fourth down conversion, it felt like they scored a big play touchdown. It was just electric. You had Bryce Young taunting. It was fun. So I think this matchup here is going to be super good. Think that the Panthers, although they will split these matchups, I feel like this is the one the Panthers has to get. However, if the Panthers lose this, I think they get swept because, again, they're just not used to the moment. And when they travel to Tampa Bay in Week 18, that's going to be a huge game. That's going to be a huge game, especially if they lose this one. So I think all the pressure's on Carolina here. 3-point underdogs at home. Obviously, they're a little less than as a team. But I'm actually interested to see how this one goes. I mean, you got Baker Mayfield with 276 completions, 2,999 yards, so we can call it 3K. It's okay. 22 touchdowns and 7 picks. And then Bryce Young, 245 completions for 2,500 yards even, 19 touchdowns and 9 picks. Rachaad White, 118 carries for 494 yards and 4 scores. Rico Dowdle, that man's been having a hell of a year. 208 carries for 978 yards and 6 touchdowns. And then, of course, the rookie Emeka Egbuka is leading Tampa Bay in receiving with 870 yards on 58 catches for 6 scores. And then Ted McMillan, the rookie in Carolina, is leading them in receiving 851 yards on 59 catches and 6 scores. So I think this game is going to be super competitive, super interesting. And like I said, they played twice in the last 3 weeks. It'll be in Carolina. The weather will be decent, probably in the 50s and 60s. They're not calling for any precipitation of any sort. Other than that, it'll be a regular day. To the Florida folks, that might be a little cold, but yeah, this will be an interesting matchup. I don't even really know how to call this one, so I'm just going to leave it at that. And y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments on who will win this game. But you know what? Matter of fact, I'm going to give y'all a pick. I'm going to go Tampa Bay to win this game on the road in Carolina, and then had to control all their destiny in the last 2 weeks of the season until they have to face these boys again in the regular season finale. I think they'll get it done. Mike Evans coming back, of course, looked pretty good last week, right? First game back in months. And so I just think they get it done. But I would not be surprised for any second if Carolina, of course, takes care of business at home with the crowd behind them in a big, big game with them with a chance to take over the division lead with a team that they match up with in the last 2 weeks to have an opportunity to clinch a playoff. So it'll be interesting, and we'll see what happens. And then we're going to now get into Jacksonville, Denver. What a matchup this will be. Both of these teams playing good ball. Jacksonville sitting at 10-4, 4-2 on the road. Denver 12-2, 7-0 at home. This is going to be a good game. It's tough to go against Denver, especially at home, at altitude, in the Mile High, man, because in the fourth quarter, second half, especially of games, not fourth quarter just in specific, but definitely when you get into that fourth quarter, teams start to feel it. I would assume the weather's going to be cold. We're talking about Colorado in December. I wouldn't be surprised if there's snow on the ground. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how things go. I think just off the nature of how things are, the Jags and the games they've lost, some of them's like, wow, what the hell are they doing out here? And then last week against a team like the Jets that's terrible, they're playing a new guy at quarterback, basically experimenting. You don't expect them to, be super competitive, and Trevor Lawrence comes out and looks like he could be the MVP of the league against them. But now you come into one of the best defenses in the league, the reigning DPOY in PS2, that'll be matched up with your number one all night. We know, of course, Travis Hunter's out. So this is going to be a real test for them to see where they're playing at this point in the year. I see they're a 3-point underdog on the road, which in my mind, on the road and a tough place to play, 3 points, that's essentially like a pick 'em in my mind. So, this is another 50-50 game, but I think Denver, they've shown throughout the season that they can win tough games, right? And when you can win those tough games and you consistently win those tough games, it's like, okay, You got to give them their respect. But now Jacksonville, on the other hand, they also want to win their division, which isn't a lot at this point. Although they should be able to, if they can win this game, they definitely should be able to because their last two games are against, I believe, the Titans and Colts. But this game here, more so, not to look too far ahead, has super implications on the first round bye and number one overall seed. You beat, if you're Jacksonville and you could beat Denver here to move to 11-4 and they move to 12-3, now you're a game back. All that matters is that head to head, and they got two of the they got two very winnable games. I'm not sure Denver's last two games off the top of my head, but then you're talking about one seed putting yourself in that position. So this is a very big game, and you also are stopping yourself from having to travel back to this place possibly in a month or so, in a playoff game. So I think this is a super big game. Of course, Trevor Lawrence has been good this year. 273 yards, 23 touchdowns, 11 picks for 3,210 yards. You had Bo Nix, 320 completions for 3,256 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. Of course, what he's able to do in the pocket, his rushing, all of that good stuff. He's a problem. Even when he doesn't look the best or his numbers don't pop off the charts, when you're in there watching him, when it's time, he's going to make them plays. And as I mentioned earlier, when 1, 2, 3, you're mediocre, and 4, if you can be that guy, teams will love you, and you just find ways to win. And then, of course, J.K. Dobbins was having a good season for him. He's back on the IR. It's crazy. He never gets these small injuries where it's like 2, 3 weeks. It's always season ending. And it's just unfortunate to see because every time he comes back, he looks like he can get back to who he believed he once was, and it just never works out. So it's unfortunate. We'll see how that works. But when he ended the year, he's still their leading rusher with 772 yards. And then, of course, Travis Etienne on the other side with 949 yards on 213 carries. 601 yards on 39 catches with only 2 touchdowns. And then, of course, the guy on the other side, Courtland Sutton, 63 catches, 886 yards, 6 touchdowns. So this is going to be a good game. But like I said, I'd be a fool to go against the Broncos at home with the way that they've been able to consistently win tough games this year. If this is going to be one of them, I got to lean with the team that's been consistently doing it all year. But like I said, this is a huge game for the 1 seed. And of course, in the AFC South, Jacksonville 10-4, Houston 9-5 right behind them. They still have to play the Colts, which of course nobody's probably expecting much out of now because of their QB situation. But they're sitting at 8-6, which they play them again. So if they drop this game, the Colts can, win a game this week. The Texans win a game. I mean, you got 3 teams within the game of each other with 2 weeks to go and some division matchups still to be played. So this is a big game, not only for the division, but for the 1 seed moving forward for Jacksonville. And then, of course, on the other side, you do have the Broncos 2 games up. They've already clinched a playoff spot on the Chargers in their division. So they should win the division, but nonetheless, they've clinched a playoff spot. And I'm still going to take them to win this game in a tough one. I just think that there'll be a little too much at home with that defense they have for Trevor Lawrence and them guys. Everybody's playing though, or at least should be playing. They don't have many people on the injury report this week, and it is only 4 mile-per-hour winds, and it should be in the 50s. So not a bad day for football at all. So we'll see. This is another good game. As y'all see, I'm doing all the important games this week. I'm not really touching on the ones that don't really have any substance this late in the season. But this is going to be another one of those ones. And I hate to keep repeating it, but I wouldn't be surprised if Jacksonville gets the win here. But I'm almost certain that Denver will come out with a win in this one. Next up, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Detroit Lions. Pittsburgh traveling to Detroit, coming off of a big primetime victory over the Miami Dolphins, which now have moved on and benched Tua Tagovailoa. It's crazy what has happened in a few years in Miami, but we don't want to get off topic. We're going to talk about these 2 teams here. Pittsburgh, 8-6, traveling to 8-6 Detroit to face the Lions. This is a game where it's very interesting because Pittsburgh, the last few weeks, their offenses finally came to life. They've been able to make some big plays, which I think has opened up their offense, being able to finally put the ball down the field and, stretch the defense out, open the defense up a little more. And it's been very helpful for their offense. And then coming off the controversial win against Baltimore a few weeks ago, they came out on prime time against the Dolphins. And although the Dolphins have won 5 out of 6 and been playing better, they haven't jumped off the screen to anyone. They still have won 5 out of their last 6 in the NFL, however you want to look at it. And Pittsburgh came in and put it on them in front of the world. So now they'll have to do it again. We're traveling to Detroit against a high-powered offense Pittsburgh's defense has been playing a lot better as of late, but I think this is a tough task. Although their offense has been playing better, I just don't know if they put up enough points in this one. But again, Pittsburgh's known and built off physicality. We know Dan Campbell tries to implement that there. Detroit's play calling can be very shaky on both sides of the ball this season. Their defense, their secondary has been super vulnerable. So I think that this can be another game where A-Rod and DK could have one of them connections where DK has a day. But again, when you put the ball on the other side, I just don't know if they'll be able to contain this explosive Detroit offense enough to stay in the game. And as I said, I see they're 7-point favorites in this matchup, which I guess you would probably have to take the Steelers with the points in this, but I definitely think that Detroit wins. And if they were to cover the 7, I wouldn't be surprised. But like I said, with a team that's built off physicality, to just ever take them from any less than 7 in a matchup like this, where the other team's secondary is vulnerable and their weak point, I think that's a tall task, but I definitely think Detroit will win this game. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, it's a big game because you have a chance to still win your division. Right now, you're 2 games back of Chicago. That's 10-4. Green Bay's 9-4-1, but they play each other this week. So you win, you position yourself to get even closer and close that gap. And then you still have 2 weeks left of the season, where you can hope things go your way, depending on if you play any of these teams in your division still or not. So you definitely want to win this if you're Detroit. And then, of course, if you're Pittsburgh, you're currently in the division lead in the AFC North. You have the head-to-head over the Baltimore Ravens. You're 8-6. They're 7-7. You have a tough matchup this week. So worst case scenario, you lose and they win. You go into week 17. Y'all had the same record and you're still in first place. So regardless, it probably comes down to week 18 for you. Either way this thing goes, unless Baltimore was to drop a game, and you were to win a game to be able to get 2-game lead on them in these next few weeks. So again, this is a game you want to win because you don't want to drop games and you want to hope that you can win and have them fall behind you so that way you can secure your division and that's a playoff spot. But nonetheless, like I said, I just think Detroit and that offense at home in the dome, great weather conditions. Familiar opponent for A-Rod though. You know, he's played in that conference or that division, I'm sorry, for basically his entire career other than the last 2 years. It'll be interesting. You know, A-Rod hasn't been the most explosive. He's only thrown for a little less than 2,600 yards. He's 6 yards off of 2,600 yards on 248 completions for 22 touchdowns, 7 picks. So not so bad, but then Jared Goff has 3,672 yards on 314 completions, 29 touchdowns, 5 picks. And then, of course, Jahmyr Gibbs, being Jahmyr Gibbs, has 1,100 rushing yards on the nose for 200 carries and 13 scores. St. Brown being St. Brown, 1,140 yards on less than 100 catches, sitting at 94 currently with 11 touchdowns. And then, of course, on the other side, you had DK Metcalf leading them in receiving with 808 yards on 55 catches with 6 scores. Been coming on more lately, as I mentioned earlier. And then Jaylen Warren with 685 yards as their leading rusher on less than 200 carries. He only has 4 scores, though. Of course, TJ Watt is questionable this week. That's a big one, right? Because without him, I mean, that's your guy up front. So that'll be a big loss. That could be a big reason why they're probably 7-point underdogs. I'm not 100% sure. Because as I said, I think that the Lions offense is just too explosive for Pittsburgh to keep up with over the course of 60 minutes. But you never know. And of course, my pick this week would be Detroit for that reason. Follow that up with why not anyone else other than the Baltimore Ravens hosting the New England Patriots, which is coming off a tough division loss there. And, you know, they had a division opponent in the Buffalo Bills up 21-0. The Bills got back in the game and ended up winning. So now you have a team that is currently sitting at 11-3, New England Patriots, traveling to Bank Stadium to face the Baltimore Ravens, which are 7-7. New England 6-0 on the road. This is a big game for them. They don't want to drop back-to-back games. And as I said earlier, them and Buffalo are actually tied head-to-head. They're one's 3-1 in the division, the other's 3-2. The Bills are, of course, 10-4, so they're 1 game back. And if for whatever reason New England loses this game, it gets real interesting. And from the spread here, the Ravens are actually 3-point favorites in this matchup. This is a super tough game. Last week, the bright sign for the Baltimore Ravens was Lamar Jackson, for the first time since coming back from injury, was not on the injury report. However, yesterday he did not practice. So, it was a little alarming to some. But my guess would be he's just resting the rest. Take a day off. Why be on the field? Every one of these games are tough, grueling, especially at the end with the position that they're currently in. So I think that was probably some just precautionary stuff. You've seen him take off a couple times last week with his explosiveness back. He didn't have a lot of passes. He was 8 for 12. He did throw 2. He had 2 or 3 drops from his receiver. So, he could have almost completed every pass he had out there. But the defense forced the shutout against Cincy, of course. So you didn't get to see them have to really open up the playbook. So now that he's fully healthy, or at least I'd assume he's fully healthy due to not being on the injury report for the first time since coming back from injury last week, I think we'll start to see them open up the playbook more. And this will be a good matchup against a good team on both sides of the ball. The Baltimore Ravens defense has been playing better. The New England defense has, been playing lights out. Drake May is surging in the MVP talks. Ravens are trying to find a way to get into the postseason, trying to find a way to win their division. Defense is putting it together at the right time. So we'll see how it goes. Drake made 290 completions this season for 3,567 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 7 picks. Lamar Jackson, 174 completions for 2,210 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 6 picks. Of course, Derrick Henry leads the way rushing, 233 carries, 1,125 yards with 10 touchdowns, but they've been getting Ali, Keaton Mitchell involved a lot more lately. Of course, Justice Hill as well. But those two specifically, they've been added to the mix a little more. Of course, Keaton Mitchell has that explosive speed that none of our other running backs have. Ali's fast as well, but he don't have that Keaton explosion. But I think they like him a little more in the passing game. So they've been putting him out there, of course, because Henry's not a receiving back. So we'll see how that goes. But of course, Henry's the bell cow there in that backfield. And then TreVeyon Henderson, what a rookie year he's having coming on. Didn't even start the year as the starter, but he has 773 yards on 143 carries with 7 scores. Diggs, after all the all-season talk they was having about X, Y, and Z, he's still the leading receiver. He's been great in the locker room. 67 catches, 731 yards, and 3 scores. Flowers leads the Ravens with 959 yards on 71 catches and only 2 touchdowns. So this will be an interesting game here. This is, wow, the matchup predictor actually has 60.4% for the Baltimore Ravens. That's interesting that it's so lopsided on a team that's been playing so good. But, I actually do think the Ravens win this matchup. As I said in all the other matchups, though, I would not be surprised if the New England Patriots win this matchup. These matchups that I am talking about in this video, they're like 50-50 big-time matchups late in the year, playoff vibes for different reasons. So I think they're good talking points. But I do think the Ravens win this one. It'll be a tough one. I think Drake May coming into T-Bank Stadium, hostile environment. See what the weather will be there for that one, because the weather may be a factor as well. We're talking about New England, right? But we're talking about high-level football at this time of the year, and this New England team hasn't experienced that. Like, yeah, we know New England has crazy weather, but this team hasn't experienced that on a winning level, at least. But it's supposed to be 10-mile-per-hour winds, so that can be crucial, for both teams as far as kicking and things go. But yeah, I think the Ravens win this one. It's going to be a hell of a game. Ravens, Pats, y'all know how that gets. So it'll be interesting for sure. But I'm leaning Ravens in this one. Let me know what y'all think. And then last but not least, we're going to wrap it up with these 49ers and Colts. That's a good matchup as well. Mainly for the sake of two things. Both of these teams are at third place in their division right now. 10-4 and 8-6. So they're having good years. But of course, Daniel Jones going down with a season in the injury. Phillip Rivers coming off of coaching high school football to being a coach. To being a starting quarterback for the Colts after 5 years in retirement. So it's just a lot going on for them. They came out last week against Seattle. Didn't look horrible in the first half. Was in the game. So you never know what can happen. But I'm going Niners to win this matchup. I think they win it pretty easily. They have a chance to win their division. Both of these teams do, but more so the Niners than the Colts, especially with everything that's out in front of them right now. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, the Colts are 5.5 point underdogs at home. So obviously you know who the better team is. It's kind of funny because when you look at the stats, you have Daniel Jones that obviously was leading them. He just went on IR. Their leading receiver, Alec Pierce, is also questionable. Brock Purdy's back playing good ball. CMC is just under 1,000 yards. He'll probably break that this game. Jonathan Taylor having a hell of a career. A hell of a season with 272 carries, 1,443 yards, and 16 touchdowns. Hell of a season. Hell of a season. And if they didn't start losing and they didn't deal with the injury, he could have been in the MVP conversation, him or Daniel Jones. But of course, the injury changed a lot for the landscape of the Colts, which is unfortunate. And so I don't want to take too long on this one because I do think that the Niners win this game easy. But of course, both of these teams still fighting for the playoffs, for the wild card, and also still have a chance to win their division. So I had to give some respect to this game. You never know what you're going to get out of the Colts. The Colts have a good defense. Philip Rivers can, I expect him to look better from this week, from last week to this week, of course. But again, I just don't think it'll be enough coming off of the performance that the 49ers had, even though it was against Tennessee, where Brock Purdy was firing on all cylinders after not playing for a while. I think that's super important for them to see that from him. So we'll see how that game goes. And then, we can actually hit on a couple of these other matchups like the Eagles Commanders. 9-5 versus 4-10, so it's not really much to talk about. So don't want to be dismissive of the fact that there's still other good teams playing. So we had a 9-5 Eagles traveling in DC to face the 4-10 Commanders. The Eagles will win this one easily. Y'all seen what they did to the Raiders last week. This is a division matchup. I know the Commanders put it together to beat the Giants. I don't see them beating the Eagles at all, especially at this time of the year. Teams are starting to try to find their stride, play a little harder, pick it up, a little more intensity as you're ramping up for the postseason, bringing out new tricks and things. So I think the Eagles will win this one pretty easily. And then you have the 10-4 Bills, which of course is playing for seed, and they still can win their division as well. Going to the dog pound to face the 3-11 Browns, which traveled to Chicago last week and got completely embarrassed, hands put on them. So now they come back home in front of their home crowd where they're 10.5 point underdogs. I think the Bills win this one, of course. The thing that's always interesting with Cleveland for me is how good the defense actually is. If Shador doesn't turn the ball over a lot, Judkins takes care of the football, they can move the ball a little bit, and the defense doesn't have to live on the field or live in tough situations from turnovers. It's always intriguing what the Browns defense can do, the havoc they can cause. And then, of course, we got to talk about Myles Garrett being one sack away, right? One sack away. And what better person would it be to get it on one of the best in the league in Josh Allen? So I'm sure he'll be chasing his ass all night. Josh Allen will be trying to get out of there so he can't get the sack on him. But like I said, the Bills should take care of business. James Cook is balling out as well. Second in the league in rushing yards with 1,415 yards, 71 carries. So, yeah, I just think I think the Bills win that one pretty easily. And then you have the 10-4 Chargers traveling to Dallas. Dallas is very good at home. Chargers are finally starting to hit that stride. They started good, hit a rough spot. Now they're playing good again. I think the Chargers will win this one, but of course, Dallas is a team that can come out and put up big points, right? They can come out and make this a shootout, and that's what they have the capability of doing. However, for them, after the unfortunate loss in Minnesota last week, they now have to win out all three of their final games and hope that the Eagles lose, which, as I just told you, I think the Eagles beat the Commanders this weekend, so there's no way that the Cowboys can make the playoffs, in my opinion. But it's never over until it's over. And I expect the Chargers to take care of business in this one. I expect the run game to probably establish and be kind of dominant as they continue to protect Herbert coming back from the hand surgery to play 2-0, two big wins off of it. So I got the Chargers over Cowboys in that one, but that's a game that it can go either way, regardless of what that record says, because of the amount of points that the Dallas Cowboys offense can put up. I mean, Dak threw for 3,931 yards this season with 26 touchdowns and only 10 INTs. And it's crazy because we talked about Rico Dowdle earlier in the segment in that matchup this week against Tampa Bay. But how about the Dallas Cowboys let him go? He had a chip on his shoulder, goes to Carolina and balls out. The Denver Broncos let go of Javonte Williams. He goes to Dallas, and he had a chip on his shoulder, and he balls out. He has 230 carries for 1,113 yards on the season this far with 3 weeks to go and 10 touchdowns as well. And then, of course, the addition of George Pickens, 81 catches, 1,212 yards, and 8 touchdowns. And that's without even talking about 88. So this offense can compete with the best of them. The defense is starting to get healthy. I actually see here Dallas is 1.5-point favorite, so that's super interesting. We'll see how it goes. Like I said, I'm going Chargers, but I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas would get the win here, considering the amount of points they can put up and how explosive that offense is. So that'll be a very interesting game. And then you had the 6-8 Chiefs, which are 2-12 Titans. Who cares about this game? With all due respect, I'm a Cam Ward fan, but their season's over with. They're not fun to watch. Kansas City, Pat Mahomes, speedy recovery. Obviously got hurt with the season ender last week. So nobody's going to really want to watch them. And on top of that, they got eliminated from playoff contention. So that game is whatever. But the Chiefs, I would think, would win because of their defense just being so good. But we will see. They got Minshew Mania, I believe, as the starter this week. Then the 4-10 Bengals versus 6-8 Dolphins. Another who cares game. Both teams eliminated from playoff contention, I believe. Dolphins benched Tua after the Monday night game against Pittsburgh. Joe Burrow and the Bengals got shut out last week in a division matchup against the Ravens. Burrow mentally seems like he might be out of it. Whatever it is, hope he can shake back, man. Hell of a player. Maybe he just needs a fresh start in a new situation. I think the Bengals win this game. I actually think that Burrow comes out and shreds them because of the way they looked last week and all the questions surrounding everything. But if he's just not in a good space, whether it's for whatever reason, it's not really a safe thing to really be out there throwing that rock, honestly, in a physical game like this. So I hope he comes out and balls out. I got the Bengals winning this game. And then the 3-11 Jets, 4-10 Saints. Pick who you want to win, right? Like, I was about to do this, but you know psychologically how that does you now. You know, you can weigh your options, pick who you flip a coin, who you think's gonna win this game. I'm gonna go Saints at home. Defense actually been pretty good, even against good teams this year. If you go look, offensively, they just don't have much without a quarterback. Big part of the reason the Jets aren't very good either, quarterback. So I'm going Saints to win this matchup at home for sure. I think they'll just take care of business. 6-8 Vikings, 2-12 Giants. I think the Vikings win this game, of course, coming off a big win against the Cowboys last week. Now they travel to MetLife to play the Giants. Giants didn't look too good last week against the Commanders. And at this point, why not play for the number one pick? No, we don't condone tanking, neither does the NFL. But on a serious note, I just don't really see them beating a 6-8 Vikings team that actually has the capability of still winning some games. And I don't know if they're completely eliminated from playoff contention or not. But I mean, they have a chance to at least finish the season with a positive record, if anything. So I'm going Vikings to win that matchup there. And then we had the 5-9 Falcons versus 3-11 Cardinals. This matchup is what it is. Jacoby Brissett, right? But the Falcons, Kyle Pitt balled last week. I got to go Falcons in this matchup. They had a better defense. To see Pitts go off like that was good to see because, you know, people have been waiting on some type of performance like that for a while. Granted, you don't see that every week, so you can't hold him to that standard. But it was good to see him come out last week and had a game he had for sure. And then you had the 2-12 Raiders versus the 9-5 Texans. The Texans will win this. They have the best defense in the NFL right now through week 15, and I don't expect it to let up in this matchup. Whether it's Geno or Kenny Pickett out there, it doesn't matter. Houston will win this game easily and look to compete for that division. And if not, of course, ultimately get a playoff spot. But that's week 16 in a nutshell, man. This is a huge week in the NFL. I appreciate everybody that'll be tapping into this video for sure. Please do me a favor, like, comment, share. It's greatly appreciated. Subscribe as well. As soon as I hit 50 subscribers, I will be able to do live broadcasts so that way y'all could tap in and talk to me and things. So please be sure to continue to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button so you get notifications when I drop content. And as always, I appreciate it. Keep an eye out